Warning. The following show features reviews from wildly unprofessional critics operating without the supervision of professionals. The thoughts and opinions held by these individuals are not to be taken seriously and do not come from a place of intellectual integrity. This show doesn't reflect the opinions of Criticless or its users. Viewer discretion is advised.
What's up? What's up? What is up, everybody? Hello, and welcome to another episode of Criticless Cast. Kind of, sort of unhinged, but not exactly, because it's just me. This is actually kind of weird to do a live stream with just me. I'm used to at least being able to like look over and bounce off of other people when I say stupid shit or something, but it's just me. I feel like OMB Reviews, I get to watch him do these solo streams for really long periods of time, but I feel like there's only some level of rambling that I can do before I feel like people are just going to get completely and totally sick of me. But anyways, on to what I am going to be talking about today, which is the new Mel Gibson film Flight Risk. We're going to be talking about this thing. I wasn't really super excited about it. Wasn't even sure that I was going to see it. There were like 3 movies coming out this weekend, all of which were these lower budget, smaller films. And I was just really kind of curious which direction I was going to go. And I was like, you know what? I haven't seen Marky in anything in a really long time. And then I saw somewhere it was teased that, or I say teased, it was announced that Mel Gibson was directing this movie. And I was like, oh, hold on, pump the brakes. This guy officially has been announced as an advisor for Trump. So, I mean, obviously, I've got to see what he's willing to put out these days. And he's been going kind of viral. He was recently on Joe Rogan and that sort of thing. And I was like, what is the man capable of these days? And so I wanted to check out the movie. And this is starring Mark Wahlberg, though, which also had me interested. I haven't seen him do anything in quite some time. And with Topher Grace showing up as well, who doesn't get a whole lot of time to shine, I was like, this is a no-brainer. I got to check this movie out. So we're going to be talking about that today. I did want to touch in a little bit on a show that I've been watching and touch in on some news, and you guys will need to bear with me a little bit as I kind of get used to navigating this whole live stream thing while I'm motor mouthing and everything. Normally Matt is doing stuff behind the scenes, so I get to lean on him a little bit, but I'm able to kind of see the comments and stuff over here. So anyways, I'm excited to do this and chat with you guys a little bit today. And what's up, everybody? Caveat Ties and Miss Criticless, Matt, everybody, what's going on? Glad you guys just joined me. But yeah, so the first thing that I actually wanted to touch on was The Last Starfighter, which I know is a little weird because it has nothing to do with anything I'm talking about today. But what it does have to do with is Drunk 3PO's new show that he has on his channel that I believe he's doing on Mondays. And he's actually reviewing older classic films, and he's kind of wrapping in a little bit of like Criticless discussion and some of y'all's reviews and things that are happening within Criticless, which is really cool. And we haven't talked about this much in the app, so I wanted to tell everybody that this was going on, and this is actually going to be what they are reviewing next week. So we have some people reviewing it, and actually Wine Fiend Zena, she spotted some reviews coming in, pointed it out to me, and so I'm excited that they're talking about this movie. It's already at a 87%, so it's a most excellent right now, which is a good sign. Now granted, my Friends with Benefits score from one voter is a 79%, Beard of Liberty. Shame on you. That's just not high enough for this glorious 80s film. So I will probably be reviewing this and whatnot as well. So, but make sure to go in and drop a Last Starfighter review, and there's a good chance that they'll touch on it on Jay's review that they do next week. So I just wanted to let everybody know that that was happening. And actually some other really cool news is that I am actually going to be at the big Megacon convention in Florida in like 2 weeks. And on Thursday is when everything kicks off. And apparently word on the street is, from what I am gathering, is that I am actually going to be at the Reboot booth with Jay. So we're going to be hanging out together and, you know, shaking hands and whatnot and meeting some of you guys. And I'm going to have some free stuff to give away. So if you want some Criticless things, if you're going to be at that convention, then just make sure to come by and say hi. And I want the whole, you know, meet all you guys, because I haven't done enough of that yet. And we're just kind of getting integrated within the community and getting to meet everybody. So anyways, just wanted to touch on that little bit of housekeeping info, I guess. But on to what I've been watching. My reviews have actually been a little slack within Criticless lately because I've been watching multiple shows. A lot of you know that I've been watching My Hero Academia. I'm on like season 5. There's a whole lot to take in, but I was informed that I should really watch as much of it as I can before dropping my review. So I've been waiting to drop My Hero Academia, which is an anime if that y'all don't know. And that's a whole other thing for people that aren't into anime. I've gotten sucked down a deep, dark rabbit hole by the weebs in Criticless, and it can't be fixed. So it's happening. But in the meantime, I decided to take a little break after finishing season 4 of that show and watched Interior Chinatown. This was actually referenced several weeks ago on our first live stream that we did with Kyle Off Script, who's in the app, and he was on our show, and he said that everybody needed to check this show out. He texted me about it, gushing, and was like, dude, this show is awesome. It is wild. It's not what I expected, and I can get behind that. This show is wild, and it was a bit more of what I was expecting, but that's because Kyle primed me. But if you haven't checked this out, I would say to give it a go. I really liked it quite a bit. If I was to drop my Criticless review right now, I think it's going to be in the rad territory somewhere, but rad territory is totally fine place to be. That's not a bad spot to be at all. I just have a few gripes with it. This show is very wild and weird and off the wall, and it's either going to be your cup of tea or not. It leans into kind of this comedy element, but also the drama component. There's some episodes I liked a lot, some of which I didn't, but essentially this story, the concept is like, what if an NPC basically woke up one day and realized that they were an NPC, that they were a part of some sort of orchestrated, controlled world. And with his component of being an NPC, he is actually a character within a television show, something like Law and Order, and he's just a side character, a guy that works in a Chinese restaurant, and he realizes one day that things aren't right. Now that is actually where my qualms kind of come in a little bit, is as the show progresses, I feel like the characters don't really fully acknowledge being in this matrix, if you will, the way that I would like. And then by the end, I think it does pay off to a degree, but also leaves you with a cliffhanger. I don't know if we're going to get a season 2. So all of that is a bit up in the air as far as where I'm going to sit with this show as a whole, but it is going to be in that 70-ish% somewhere. But as you see, Banjo Sandwich gave it a 50%, his very classic 50% reviews, and we've got a 95%, and we've got a 100 by Kyle Off Script, so he loved it. And I do think that there will be people that absolutely adore this. It actually has some Twin Peaks vibes to it, and I think that there were intentional callbacks to Twin Peaks because there were moments in this show where the script, or not the script, but the score itself actually felt like and sounded a bit like Twin Peaks, and I'm pretty sure that's what they were doing. But there were callbacks to Law and Order and all sorts of other television shows, and there's some I don't know, some of the more gritty cop shows in there as well. This show takes a lot of twists and turns, gets super weird and off the wall at times. I don't even fully know how to process it, but I'd be interested to hear everybody's thoughts. It's on Hulu and Disney Plus, the Hulu bundle of Disney Plus, so you can check it out if you're subscribe to those, and this does star several comedians with Jimmy Yang and not Sullivan Jones, but Ronnie Chang, and both of these guys, especially Ronnie, is hilarious, and Chloe Bennett is in this, who is she's a baddie, but they make her look pretty terrible for most of this show, so there's that. I wasn't crazy about that, but yeah, Matt, I see you talking in the chat here too. I think you might be interested in this show as well. Free Guy is a little bit of a good description as well. Caveat ties. It's an interesting thing, and so Doyle is in here saying that '90s thrillers are back, and you know what? I cannot deny that when talking about Flight Risk, which is why I wanted to put that in the title. And I hope that other people pick up on that vibe that this movie is definitely putting off. But one thing that after Interior Chinatown, I wanted to touch on a little bit of news that did drop today since I didn't do my normal show, but it's that Scary Movie is back. We are getting a reboot, actually, where they're starting this whole thing over, but it's going to have the Wayans Bros, and it's going to be coming out in June of 2026. This is wild. If you were a 2000s kid or 90s, in that range, and you saw the Scary Movies, like it's in your brain. This was the Airplane for the 90s and 2000s people. It was kind of a kickoff of a lot of these spoofy, weird, goofy movies that poke fun at other genres. Scary Movie obviously was honed in on the horror element and was very comedic. They were pretty funny. You know, mileage is going to vary. I have a feeling that if you were to go back and watch them now, they probably wouldn't hold up super well because they're very much of the time these types of movies are, which is why I have the opinions that I do about Airplane. So, but it also earned me the nickname of Shirley, so there's that. But being that we have a Scary Movie coming back, I think it's pretty cool. This is going to be the first time the Wayans brothers have worked together in 18 years, and they're planning on writing an original script and fully restarting this franchise, and I think that that's pretty cool. I mean, good on them. It says the first film opened to 42.5 million, which is pretty awesome for an R-rated horror comedy movie. And so that's pretty awesome. I will probably be checking this out, to be completely honest. And obviously, it's going to rip on a lot of these modern horror movies that have come out. And the thing is they've got a lot to work with because this series has not been around for a very long time. So I think it's pretty cool. Good on the Wayans brothers for getting back together. And another thing that I did want to touch on, but I don't really want to get into in this show because it is a giant can of worms and probably going to be a total live stream that like Matt and I need to have one-on-one, like chatting with you guys and y'all interacting and bouncing off of us. But is the Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds, Justin Baldoni situation? It is an absolute crap show. This thing gets crazier every day, and it's kind of blown me away as to how wild it is. But one of the things that I wanted to bring up and kind of touch on is that more and more that the news comes out, and this was my speculation from the beginning, is it sounds like Ryan Reynolds is actually at the root of this whole thing. And if they take this to court, Ryan Reynolds is going to look terrible. Now, if you don't know about this whole scenario, essentially what's going on is Justin Baldoni was in a movie with Blake Lively, this chick flick that ended up doing fairly well. And basically, it sounds like there was a lot of trouble on set, but a lot of people are looking at it and it's sounding kind of like Ryan Reynolds is actually just maybe a bit jealous and is stirring up a giant pile of crap. And I mean, this guy is reaching like billionaire territory at this point. But the thing is that this is the type of thing that you do if you're trying to tank your career, unless you're 100% sure that you're right. And they're coming after this Baldoni guy who is smaller, not as big of a voice and whatnot as they are, but he came with receipts. His lawyer is going wild, and right now, the two of them are basically trying to get his lawyer to be quiet because he is airing out all the dirty laundry, and it is wild and honestly pretty entertaining. So like I said, we might touch on this on another show, but I am interested to hear everybody's thoughts on what is going on with this situation. And it's actually really interesting once you start going down the rabbit hole, even if you're not totally into the whole Hollywood drama stuff. This could really, honestly, if they follow through with this, it could be the end of some careers, at least for a while, or the fact that these celebrities might be going dark for a while, because we haven't seen a high caliber case and situation like this since like the Johnny Depp situation. So I'm intrigued at the very least about this story and excited to see what plays out with it. So yeah, let's go ahead and move on into talking about Flight Risk. Now, as usual, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little bit of a spoiler-free chat for this, and then I'll bring in some spoilers. But honestly, I'm still going to probably pull back from some of the spoilers just because I know some of y'all don't mind that as much. But there are some things that are worth not having spoiled in this movie, I think. And I am really curious about the public opinion of this film and what shakes out. I did a little bit of digging before starting this, and apparently, as far as the early movie stuff goes, it made a $950,000 with the Thursday night premiere. So it's close to 1 million. But analysts are predicting this thing to hit within the 9 million to 11 million range, which is a decent amount of money, but it's not going to be enough to make back what this movie cost. Now, that might be actually just that might be just the weekend analysis. So if that's the case, then I think that there's a strong chance this movie can make its money back, because I actually did some digging, and apparently this thing is working off of like $25 million, which is not a whole lot in this realm. $25 million is pretty cheap. And actually, sorry, I just saw Caveat Ties through in the chat. He was asking when I was talking about the tea with Blake Lively. He was asking about Obama and Jennifer Aniston, and that is another one that we have not covered or talked about, and we might actually talk about that at the same time that we talk about this Blake and Ryan stuff. Maybe Matt and I'll do it next week, or even bring in one of the ladies to join us with the chat. My wife has been all up on this for the past couple days because it is quite fascinating. So maybe we will talk about the fact that apparently Obama and Jennifer Aniston were having some sort of thing. I don't even know. I don't want to spread fake news here because I haven't done my research, but I've heard a little bit about it, and it sounds scandalous, especially scandalous being all the rumors about Obama. But we're not going to go into that either. So we'll see what happens with him and Michelle. We'll see what happens with the two of them. And so, anyways, back to flight risk here. So the thing is that this movie, with it starring some of these folks, it feels like he kind of collected a few redheaded stepchilds from Hollywood. And we all know that Mel is one of those. And with the fact that Mark Wahlberg seems to be, he's leaned pretty hard into his whole, basically like his spirituality and his religion. And that really ended up hurting him, I think. And Hollywood really doesn't like when people are vocal about that kind of stuff. They'd much rather you just sit and talk about gender ideology all day. So, whatever. But Topher Grace also, I've heard some interesting things about him. And when you look into Topher and the fact that this guy, essentially, he was surrounded, it sounds like, by a lot of garbage with that 70s show. Garbage being the individuals and the humans involved in that show. And he's stayed relatively low-key in Hollywood, and we all know he's a great actor. He puts on a good show, and most people tend to like him. And so with them also bringing him into this, it got me excited because he was recently in a film that we reviewed, which was Heretic, but he was barely in it, hardly even had a speaking role. It was more of just kind of almost a tease to him as an actor. He had bright blonde hair. He was a little hard to recognize. And so, I don't know. I'm glad to see him back. I hope he's doing more work. And even if Mel and some of these other, like I said, these miscreants from Hollywood, if they all gather together and start this sub-Hollywood situation, I'm all for it. Just bring in all the redheaded stepchilds from Hollywood and start making some good movies again. But this thing, I compared it in the show notes and everything, basically to something like Speed. And I wasn't expecting that. I honestly had no idea what I was getting into. I had not seen the trailer for this movie, and that is the thing that I want to say first is don't watch the trailer for this. Hollywood is out of hand with their trailers. I watched the trailer after getting out of the movie, and I was like, no, why did y'all do this? Like, there's so many ways that this movie could have been teased, but they decided not to do it. Instead, they just pretty much wore the whole thing on their sleeve, and I feel like it's probably going to hurt the film. Now, I mean, the thing with Mark Wahlberg being bald, which is fantastic. It really is. Now, I will say there were a few scenes where the bald cap, you can tell it's a bald cap, so that's, you can take it or leave it. It's one of those things where the skin color doesn't quite match up and that sort of thing. But whatever. He still looks great. They gave him like some bad teeth and stuff too, but they play it for jokes, and that was actually the most surprising thing about this movie for me is the jokes. This movie is actually surprisingly funny, and I commend them for that because I wasn't expecting that aspect of this movie. Obviously, it's billed as a crime drama action thriller, so or action adventure thriller. So yeah, I commend them for the comedy element. Now, it sounds like we have 2 reviews already within Criticless. We have a 59%, a decent from Shorty Short, who's been a longtime user, same for Experiment 626, who had a 65%. And honestly, in my opinion, these aren't bad places to be. That's why I created the decent rating. Being in the middle is not bad, which also brings me to the Geeks and Gamers review by Alex. And he actually gives us a shout out here down at the bottom saying to drop your reviews at Criticless, so make sure to do that. But Alex reviewed it. Also, where's your Criticless review, Alex? Where's that with the link to this? You need to do that, buddy. But yeah, so he dropped a review and he gave it a 5.4, which on the Geeks and Gamers scale is a bad. So Jeremy, this is my statement to you, buddy. We need to change the scale. A 5.4 out of 10 is not bad. That is decent. That's what we call it. So I suggest adding the Criticless rating scale down here. That's just my thoughts on it. But a 5.4 is not bad. It's a decent. And a decent is not a bad place to be. That means you got like a 50-50 chance of liking it. So yeah, these guys have left reviews and we might touch a little bit more on that. But we do have the themes down here. So if you're coming into this movie, I would say this is not one that you want to take the kids to. Actually, I was surprised for like a Mel Gibson film. It is rated R for a reason. There is a lot of language in this. There's actually quite a bit of violence violence as well. There now a bit more nudity. Is that some commentary on the scalp? Is that what we're talking about here? Oh, okay, good point. Yeah, there's a lot of innuendo and commentary that is very sexual in this movie, so that makes sense that they would mark that as the nudity and sexuality. And actually, we need to fully spell that out on the web version of this. So political bias, there is none. Family friendliness is a no. And as far as the entertainment value, I'd put it actually at a bit more to a lot. But this thing is a bit of a slower burn thriller type film, but it keeps the pace along. And great news, it's only an hour and a half. So there's that. But as far as my actual opinions on Flight Risk, I put in the thumbnail, but was that it sticks the landing. And obviously, pun intended, I figured Matt would be proud of that one because it's something that he probably would have said if we were filming this live. Without a doubt, he would have said that. So, you're welcome, Matt. I stuck a pun in on the thumbnail. But yeah, so this movie, my opinion on it, after marinating a little bit, I'm going to put this in the rad range. But I think I am in with some of the others where this isn't one of these movies. It's not a most excellent war. People are going to be over the moon about it, and they're going to be talking about it decades later like Speed. It's just not quite that good, but that doesn't mean that this is a bad movie, because it's absolutely not. The 90-minute runtime really helps things out. Normally pointed that out in the chat. It really does. And with that shorter time frame on a thriller, also, if you drag your feet with a thriller, it can really make it painful to watch. And I thought that this moved along pretty well, but it's not breaking any new ground. It is just a old school thriller movie, but I was really honestly happy with all of it. And I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that I had no idea what was coming with Flight Risk because I didn't watch the trailer. That is a huge component to this. Don't watch the trailer. It will spoil things. And so I would just say, man, with the spoiler-free component of this, I will say that this is a bad set of events happen on a plane. What happens is this U.S. Marshal, played by Michelle Dockery, who I was not familiar with. Apparently, her biggest thing that she's known for is Downton Abbey, but I mean, she was on Boy Kills World and some other things as well. So I've seen her around, but I didn't recognize her right off the jump. But I think she does an excellent job, and this is actually, surprise, it's her movie. This isn't the other guys. This is mostly her movie. And I would say that Mark Wahlberg actually takes a back seat for the majority of this movie. But essentially what happens is she's a U.S. Marshal, and she gets Topher Grace, who is basically going to be put into a witness protection type of a situation, but he's committed some crimes, and they're going to let him slide. You find all of this out within the first, 3 minutes. But basically that they get him as a prisoner, but if he confesses and whatnot, he's going to get cut loose, and he's going to blow the whistle on a big mob family that he worked for. So that's basically the setup, and then Mark Wahlberg is the pilot, and that's the best thing to know. He shows up, and he's this kind of southern bumpkin. He's got a twang. I was very surprised, not expecting that from Marky Mark, and actually when he shows up, he's not bald, so that's another interesting component, but it just surprised me from the second this movie starts. There's actually just a whole lot of comedy, and they really lean into it, and at first it comes across a bit cheesy because of how they do that, because you aren't expecting it, but as the movie goes along, you're like, oh, okay, this movie is leaning very much into lightening this thriller aspect by throwing in the comedy, which totally works for me. And I think that this is a perfectly fine time at the theater. This is a good time. I think Mel Gibson did a good job. With some of the larger films that he's done, like Hacksaw Ridge was the last thing that he did, and that movie is really praised. A lot of people love it. The same for Apocalypto, Passion of the Christ, Braveheart. I mean, this guy has done some mega big movies. This isn't that. This isn't those. This is actually more of like a hammy, goobery 90s style thriller, which is cool. We don't get enough of that, and it makes sense. This whole Trump bringing him in for bringing Hollywood back again, it makes sense, and that's kind of what he's trying to do in this movie, is give you this popcorn film, this goofier movie that you can just kind of enjoy with somebody. You're in the theater for an hour and a half. You don't take yourself too seriously. It gives you several bombastic moments that might or might not be realistic, but also kind of who cares, whatever. There was a few points, because the thing is that he gets taken into this witness protection situation, or I call it that. He's still a prisoner, but they take flight and things go wrong. And the whole movie is about things going wrong on this airplane, and they go very badly. And obviously, it makes sense that they are leaning on Mark Wahlberg as kind of this main figure, but this isn't Mark's movie, and that's totally fine. He does a great job, and really, all three of these are really the only people in the whole movie, except for people that you hear on intercoms and things. So this definitely really does harken back to the movies kind of like Speed, and I really appreciated that. It didn't blow my mind necessarily, but I'll say this, there are some moments at the end that had me audibly exclaiming, and I got really excited and had a whole lot of fun with. And so I don't know, man. I know that people are probably honestly going to be harder on this movie. There's probably going to be some people that hate it and call it cheesy and stupid, but like Topher Grace is really funny here. He brings his comedic chops from that 70s show, and he's just has a lot of snarky moments, and I thought that all of that was really, really fun and a neat approach for this movie. And Hazel says in the chat, she said she was kind of surprised that Mel didn't make something, or that he made something so standard instead of going the epic route. And really, I was surprised too, because like I said, without seeing the trailers, I didn't know. I didn't have any warning. I wasn't primed for what this was. In many ways, that was good. But obviously, we have gotten accustomed to Mel doing these really big budget movies. But I think it's totally fine that this wasn't crazy and bombastic. There are going to be some moments where you're like, all right, this is absurd. This is a little ridiculous, but I think that that's okay. That's par for the course for this type of movie. And I think that there were a lot of twists and turns and things with the plot because there's a lot of downtime with these characters just interacting with each other. And honestly, I'm here for Mark Wahlberg in the role that he played without giving any spoilers. Man, and I'm really struggling on if I even want to do a spoiler conversation for this because I know that it's going to make some of you guys bail and you don't want stuff ruined, but I'm kind of almost pumping the brakes on doing any spoilers on this show. But I'll just say that Mark is great and I liked what he did here, and he does some very out of character things, and it's one of these things where if you have seen the trailer, then you know exactly what I'm getting at. But if you have not seen the trailer, then you're really in for some fun stuff here, which is that he is playing something that's very uncharacteristic, and we know that with the fact that he's bald in this movie, which big props to him. I mean, this guy, he was known for being Marky Mark. This guy was like wearing, doing like underwear modeling and stuff. He was the heartthrob, the sex symbol back in the 90s, and now he's like making himself bald and has busted teeth and stuff. Now, granted, if he took his shirt off, he'd be absolutely ripped and cut and all that. But still, I commend him for doing what a lot of these Hollywood celebrities don't do anymore, which is just humble themselves a little bit with their acting and go there with it. So I don't totally disagree with these guys. And actually, since I'm not getting into spoilers, I guess technically Shorty Short has a spoiler in that first sentence there. But I guess what I am going to do, I will go ahead and pivot over into spoilers, but I'm not going to go full spoiler territory, more of just the stuff I've been avoiding within the last few minutes. But yeah, so spoilers now, mild ones, but not giant ones. The biggest spoiler here being that Mark Wahlberg turns out to be the villain. And they show that in the trailers. They really give all that away, and they hold that back for a bit. You get a good 20 minutes or so where you don't actually know that Mark Wahlberg is the bad guy, and they're discovering it as it goes. And I think that there were some ways that they could have painted this trailer in a light in which people didn't know who the villain was. I actually thought Topher Grace was going to be the villain of this movie, and he's not. He's actually just kind of the comedic relief. And that works perfectly, and I think that everybody really, these three showed up. There's a little bit of hammy or wooden acting earlier on in the movie, but it ironed itself out as things went, and I was totally here for it and was having a lot of fun. And like I said, I laughed quite a bit and got really excited, but Mark Wahlberg playing this villain was actually awesome. He really did some crazy things here where he's really vulgar and nasty and raunchy, and he's essentially a hitman for the mob, and that's why he's on this plane. He stole the plane, and he actually is the guy that took over and is planning on taking these guys and torturing them and doing all sorts of bad things to them and basically getting the hit for the mob. But apparently this is one of those he's one of these hitmen that is more like a serial killer, and he's very vulgar and nasty and talks about all the gross and vile things that he's going to do to people. And there are things that come in over the intercom where he's basically expressing how he's going to handle things. things, and it's pretty wild, and it is pretty graphic, and he's very nasty and raunchy as far as they were getting at with the nudity and sexual content. Some of the stuff that he says to these people is gross. It sounds like he spent some time in prison and is not afraid to do some extraordinarily unsavory things. So all of that wrapped in this Mark Wahlberg being bald and sleazy and all of that was really cool and a really fun approach. And I think that this is totally a really fun movie to watch, even if it's just at home. You don't necessarily have to go to the theaters. If this is one of those, you catch a matinee and you can go see this for a little cheaper, like hop in on that matinee price and just have fun with it. Don't expect yourself to take it too seriously. You're going for old school 90s style filmmaking, and it's brisk and easy to watch. And I really do recommend it. So I don't know. I had a good time. I'm gonna officially do my review and I'll drop it within Criticless, but I think I'm probably gonna put it at about a 70, which I think is totally fair. And that's the thing with our scale, is it's like a rad is a good place to be. And I think that it will probably end up in that decent territory after all of the other reviews come in. And I guess now that we're in spoilers, I can talk about Shorty Short's review, which is that she does point out that he's just a really disgusting villain. And, she kind of agreed with me as far as Topher being back again and him being really entertaining. And then the lead, she's, the straight man. But it's not any kind of girl bossy stuff. It's believable and interesting. And she has a good role in this movie. And so Experiment dropped his also, and I was really jealous. Apparently, Cinemark did an early screening. He shared his image in Criticast, I think, in our group, and essentially they gave away bald caps to see the movie. I was actually looking to see if they had bald caps at AMC because I was going to wear one on this show, and that would have been amazing. But unfortunately, no bald caps for me. So that is how it is. And, Normie in the chat says if it's a 70, then that's great. And for this time of year, honestly, and that's a great point because January is quite often where they send movies to die. Really, it's where the crap gets dumped most of the time, and that is really a solid place to be. And I think most people are going to sit in that decent to rad range. I don't think we're going to get a ton of most excellence. This isn't going to blow your mind. There is an ending sequence at this movie that I thought was awesome with the way that they handled the conclusion of the film, and it really, I like I said earlier, I exclaimed at one point pretty loudly because it was one of those like, oh shit. So there's some cool stuff in it. I really dug that. And caveat, I am not going to shave my head for one podcast episode, but I'll say this: I have been known to do plenty of ridiculous things if the bet is proper. So for Criticless future, who knows? So I've had more than one mohawk, very big ones, because of dares and things. So but I do wish I could have gotten the bald cap like Experiment got for his showing. But he does kind of touch on the fact that some of the dialogue in here is cheesy, and with Topher being the standout, I think he was as well. And Mark Wahlberg does do crazy very, very well. And he was super funny. So even in the insanity of it, there's a lot of exciting moments in between it. And I don't think it could have been any longer at all. It maybe even could have been a little bit shorter, honestly. But that's okay. An hour and a half is totally fine and a good place to be for a movie like this. So I'm interested to see, as our reviews kind of start chugging in, where we're going to sit with it. But I think if you're planning on going to see it this weekend, obviously we've seen over the past year or so, there's a lot worse things that you could see. It's like this is doing much better for me personally than, the likes of like Joker 2 or something. All of these were big budget movies have tanked and been terrible. And I'm really happy that we are just getting a regular old school film like this. And Ricky to the Icky, what's up, dog? How you doing, buddy? And thanks for popping in and out, everybody. I was curious how this time of day for a live stream was going to do. I was really curious because we haven't done any of these, and honestly, in the future, I could potentially do some of our news shows this way instead of actually doing the pre-recorded stuff, because it's not a bad way to do it, and I get to interact with you guys, and it obviously helps with the channel and stuff as well to do some more live streams now that we're leaning into doing this kind of thing. And like we've mentioned, Matt and I, we did one other one that seemed to do fairly well. So the news is fun to talk about with other people for sure. But yeah, I think that Flight Risk is a pretty solid time, and I had a lot of fun with it, and I hope everybody else does too. I was looking on the IMDb scale right now. It's like 768 people. It's at a 5.7 out of 10. I could go the old school Criticless cast route and look up Rotten Tomatoes really quick and see what the critics are saying, because I have a strong... Yep. Oh, man, am I good. Okay, so yeah, the critics are bombing this, and that is by 59 reviews, guys. That is 59 critics reviewing this thing at a 20%. Right now, we only technically have 2, but my third one added into the mix, it would already put it at a rad. But this is brutal. They're basically calling it straight to DVD action movie. Yeah, this is not really a surprise from the critics. They're calling it, saying that it has sloppy direction. I do not think that that's the case. But that's the other thing, is like, okay, so Gibson handcuffed to camera work is the amalgamation of some few close-ups, and basically it is, though. You're stuck on a tiny little, like, 4-seater plane. It makes sense, but a lot of these people calling it boring and whatnot, I just don't agree. This movie is not boring. I'm not surprised that the critics hate it. They also hate Mel Gibson. They don't like him anymore. As we know, these critics are extraordinarily biased and have horrendous opinions when they're propping up things like that Emilia Perez movie, which everyone pretty much unanimously hates. Even on the more like citizen critic side of things, everyone's hating it, and yet the critics are saying that it's good. It's like, give me a break. You guys are full of shit. Nobody believes you or likes you. So go home. But you know, whatever. So yeah, everybody's saying that it's kind of dumb and whatnot, but calling it unwatchable, that's absurd. Now, the CGI, someone mentioned that. So there is a scene in this movie where the plane is shown, and I do not know if we have an image of it, but there's a shot in the film where essentially you get to see, because it takes place in the Alaskan mountains, you get to see the plane on the runway before it takes off with all the characters and the mountains in the background and stuff, and for some reason they didn't film that on site, and it looks really bad. Like it's a really bad green screen like CG situation. I don't even know what was happening, but they should have shot it on site. I know that they filmed this for cheap, but like, how much would it take to have a plane on a runway in Alaska and just do a shot? I mean, I've been to a very similar type of location by Montana or Wyoming, wherever it was, and honestly, they could have even shot it there and then CG'd snow, and it would have looked the exact same, and it would have at least been a real shot. So that was kind of a bummer, but honestly, all the rest of the CG was fairly fine, like the plane in flight and that sort of thing, and all of it pretty much takes place inside of this cabin. So it is a very very tight film here. So there's that. But yeah, guys, I think that most folks are going to like this a lot more than the critics. This is probably going to be one of those where a ton of people don't necessarily see, but I think that the audience score is going to be significantly higher than a 20%, and I don't think it deserves that level of bashing. Is this going to have people like running home and telling all their friends to go see it in theaters? No. Most people will probably be like, hey man, when this thing drops on Netflix, like go check it out. It's pretty solid. So that's really really not a bad place to be. And actually, in the comments here, Scovola said that they are just hating on Gibson for supporting Trump. And I do agree that probably plays a big role in this, and there is a strong chance that the reason that the score is this low is that this is a lashing that Gibson is getting for simply being chosen by Trump and being friends with him, or whatever the case may be, and being brought into this. Like I said, he's been the redheaded stepchild of Hollywood for a long time, and now with this move with Trump, it's just they're gonna take it out on him, and that's just how it goes. We know that all of these critics, for the most part, tend to be quite far on the left side of the spectrum. So this doesn't really surprise me that they would give him a lashing for something like that, and they wouldn't want people to go see his movie and support him, being that he's in the role that he is now. So I could see them even just bashing it for that. That's a really good point to make. So Yeah, guys, that's my flight risk review. I think that pretty much covers everything today, and I really appreciate everybody showing up for the chat. And I want to do more of this. Like I said, I think Matt and I might be covering some news coming up soon. Maybe we'll do that special news coverage where we talk about this Blake Lively situation and maybe bring in some of the ladies or something. That would be fun because the whole situation is progressing very rapidly, and to the point that just to keep up to date on it, I mean, you could watch like some of the longest like YouTube videos or whatever imaginable just to even get caught up on it all, which we have kind of been doing around our house lately because it is fascinating. And because from the beginning I was like pretty sure that Ryan is the bad guy in this whole scenario, and it turns out that it's really looking like he was causing a lot of problems. There are actually whistleblowers involved with this situation, to where it is sounding like Ryan Reynolds actually was essentially like controlling things like the script and was requesting to watch the dailies from the filming of the film because of possibly some jealousy over Justin Baldoni. There are already people getting videos removed off of YouTube and TikTok and elsewhere. Like, they have their PR to the max right now. They are wanting people to shut up and stop talking about this. And like I said, we all know Ryan Reynolds is getting to this point where he's reaching like billionaire status. And honestly, if you watch his comedy, and we all know he's kind of becoming the character that he plays in movies, or that's just him, it doesn't really surprise me with the types of jokes and things, the way he is to be petty, to be slinging that petty spaghetti. So I do want us to talk about some more news soon. But guys, thanks for showing up to the live chat. This was fun, and I will do more of it. And hopefully next time we will have the entire unhinged cast, crew, whatever, back together. We'll have Crisco in here. We will have Matt slipping into the void and myself, and we will do a more traditional review before I head out of town for the Florida trip. So I don't exactly know what's going to happen with all that in Megacon, but if you are in Florida, make sure to check me out and come say, make sure to check me out at Megacon. Come say hi, and I'll probably, hopefully, still have some free stuff on me. We'll be out there for a couple hours at the Rippaverse booth, like I mentioned earlier in the show. But if you're just jumping in and you have not subscribed to the channel yet, make sure to do that down below. Hit that subscribe button. Give us the likes. You guys have been throwing us the comments and stuff. I'm loving how active the chat is, and I really, really appreciate all of you guys for coming up in here and saying hi and commenting and everything. And so just a real quick shout out here, Planet X, thanks for popping in and showing the app love and everything. Ricky, also, what's up? Once again, Caveat Ties, Matt, Hazel, all you guys, thanks for hopping in. Doyle, all of you, really appreciate it. This has been great. And yeah, like I said, subscribe down below, hit that, give us those likes, the comments, and I will be back really, really soon, being next week, with some more news or maybe some reviews. Who knows? There are a couple movies out this weekend, like I mentioned, and I might even decide to just review one of those earlier next week because there is one that has my attention. So we will see. No promises, but everybody take it easy, and I will be back soon. Later.